Thanksgiving always brings out the weirdest in my family, but this one felt cursed from the minute I walked through the door. I'm Nate, 31, and I've had a complicated relationship with my extended family for as long as I can remember. It's not that I hate them, okay? Maybe I do a little, but it's more that I've never quite fit in. They're the kind of family that thrives on appearances, pristine holiday photos, bragging rights about college acceptances, promotions, overpriced SUVs parked in the driveway. Meanwhile, I was always the artsy kid, the quiet one, the one who chose to take a gap year to backpack across Southeast Asia instead of jumping straight into law school like my cousin Jenna, or working under Uncle Rick at his insurance firm like basically everyone else. So yeah, I became the black sheep early on, and they never let me forget it. My parents moved out of state 5 years ago, so I don't see them at these gatherings anymore, which makes these events even more isolating. But I still go. Out of guilt, maybe, or habit, or because a small part of me hopes they'll finally see me for who I've become. Not the failure they love to joke about behind my back, but someone who actually built something. Quietly. On his own. No handouts. No trust fund. This year, Thanksgiving was being hosted at my Aunt Carla's place. Suburban perfection, complete with the seasonal wreath, cinnamon candles, and a fireplace playing one of those fake crackling videos from YouTube. I arrived right on time, carrying a bottle of wine I knew no one would drink because it wasn't some overpriced Napa label, and I was barely through the door before the first comment landed. Hey, look who decided to show up. Uncle Rick smirked, already holding his second glass of scotch. Didn't know the unemployed had such busy schedules. It stung, but I learned to play it cool. I smiled politely, gave him a nod, and made my way to the living room where the rest of the family buzzed with the usual pre-dinner chaos. Kids running around in itchy sweaters, women trading pumpkin pie recipes, and the men clinking glasses while trading stock tips like they were on Wall Street. Same script every year. Then Jenna walked in. Now, my cousin Jenna has always had this quiet vendetta against me. We're the same age, went to the same high school, and for some reason, she's never forgiven me for being voted most likely to succeed in our senior yearbook. She got most likely to marry rich. I guess that stung a little more than she let on back then. Jenna's always been obsessed with climbing the social ladder, and it shows. Designer everything, dramatic fake laugh, and the uncanny ability to turn every conversation back to her achievements or her boyfriend of the month. Only this time, it wasn't just a boyfriend. She walked in with a guy I'd never seen before. Tall, handsome, looked like he'd stepped out of a men's magazine ad. You could practically hear the collective gasp from the aunts. "This is Michael," Jenna announced with a smile so wide it had to hurt. "My fiancé." I expected a round of congratulations, and she got them. Aunt Carla was already tearing up. Uncle Rick clapped him on the back like he'd just saved a kitten from a burning building. Someone made a joke about setting a date, and the women descended like a pack of well-manicured wolves, pulling her into the kitchen to hear everything. Michael, to his credit, seemed a little overwhelmed by the attention. He spotted me standing awkwardly near the piano and walked over, offering a hand. "Hey man, I'm Michael." I shook it. "Nate." He smiled. "So, Jenna said you two were close growing up?" I raised an eyebrow. "Did she? That's generous." He laughed nervously, probably sensing the tension. "Well, I guess now's as good a time as any to get to know everyone. You live around here?" "Not really," I said. "I travel a lot for work." That's when Jenna reappeared, her smile already shifting into something more amused than welcoming. She slid up next to Michael and wrapped her arm through his. "Nate's being modest," she said, loud enough for half the room to hear. "Let's just say he peaked in high school." A few people chuckled, including Uncle Rick, who added, "He's basically unemployed, living off vibes and old trophies." The laughter wasn't mean-spirited exactly. It was worse. It was casual, familiar, like it wasn't even a question anymore. I said nothing. Years ago, that kind of jab would have lit me up. But I learned to hold my tongue, even when the urge to lash out burned hot under my skin. Because the truth is, they had no idea what I really did. I never talked about it. Not because I was embarrassed, but because it wasn't worth the effort. Trying to explain what I built would only invite more questions, more doubt, more casual dismissal. So I stayed quiet. I let Jenna have her moment. Let Rick get his laughs. Let them all assume I was the same guy who once won a state debate trophy and then threw his life away. But Michael didn't laugh. He glanced at me again, curiosity flickering behind his eyes. And then, so subtle I almost missed it, he pulled out his phone under the table, turned the screen away from Jenna, and typed something into Google. I saw my name on the screen, and then I saw his face change. His smile faded. His eyebrows twitched just slightly. He looked up at me again, this time not like I was Jenna's loser cousin, but like he'd just realized something didn't add up. And that's when things started to get interesting. Michael didn't say anything at first. He just looked at me like he was trying to recalibrate everything Jenna had told him about her family. About me. He gave a polite nod and stood there awkwardly for a second before walking off toward the kitchen. I saw him glance over his shoulder once, his expression unreadable. But the pale flicker in his face after that Google search stuck with me. And I knew, whatever he saw, it wasn't what Jenna had prepped him for. I'd built something, quietly, over the last decade. After college, I started a tech consulting firm from a tiny rented studio apartment with a secondhand MacBook and a whiteboard that doubled as a dinner tray. I specialized in back-end architecture for small businesses that couldn't afford Silicon Valley talent. Word got around. Eventually, I was leading development for a few fintech startups, then branching out into my own SaaS product. 4 years ago, I sold a tool I built for 6 figures. 2 years later, a licensing deal brought in more than I'd made in the previous decade. I didn't talk about it. I didn't flash it. But it gave me freedom. Real freedom. I didn't have to work another day in my life, but I still did. Not for status. For the satisfaction of building something real. But to my family, I was still between gigs. Dinner was called shortly after that, and we all gathered around the long, carefully decorated table. There was the kids' table off to the side, of course, though most of those kids were in high school now. At the grown-up table, seating had clearly been arranged, and I'd been slotted in at the far end, next to the kitchen door and a drafty window that whistled every time someone walked past. Across from me, Jenna and Michael, flanked by Aunt Carla and Uncle Rick, both already 3 glasses deep into their holiday cocktails. I barely touched my plate. "So, Nate," Aunt Carla said halfway through the meal, her voice artificially sweet like a realtor on commission, "any exciting new projects you're dabbling in these days?" I nodded slowly. "A few things in the pipeline. I just wrapped up a..." "He makes TikToks," Jenna cut in, rolling her eyes as she reached for the gravy boat. "It's like coding tutorials or something. He's like a YouTuber now." "I'm not," I said calmly. Michael cleared his throat. "Actually, he peaked in high school," Jenna said with a grin, cutting him off before he could continue. "Remember that trophy wall he used to have in his parents' basement? What happened to that, by the way?" I blinked. "I gave them away. Donated most of them." "Wow," she said. "Even the debate state champion one? You used to polish that thing like it was your baby." "I was 17, I said. "People grow up." Uncle Rick chuckled. "Yeah, but not always in the right direction." It was subtle, not an outright insult. But the message was loud and clear. You had potential once. And you wasted it. I sat back in my chair and looked around the table. They were all laughing. Not maliciously, just dismissively. As if my entire life since high school had been one long, meandering detour into irrelevance. My jaw tightened, but I stayed quiet. And that's when the real betrayal hit. Halfway through dessert, some overpriced cranberry cheesecake Jenna had insisted everyone try. Uncle Rick clinked his glass to get everyone's attention. All right, he slurred with a half smile. "I've got a little announcement to make." The room quieted. "As you all know," he said, "I've been grooming someone to eventually take over my side of the business, at least the client accounts I've managed personally for years." There were a few murmurs of interest. This had been a topic of speculation at every holiday dinner for years. "And I've decided," he continued, looking straight at Michael, "that there's no better candidate than this young man right here. Michael, welcome to the firm." Applause. Smiles. Jenna beamed. Aunt Carla teared up. Michael looked stunned, but pleased. I sat frozen. You see, Uncle Rick and I had spoken. Years ago, when I was just starting out, he came to me with a messy back-end problem one of his clients was having. I cleaned it up in a weekend. For free. He offered me a role, part-time, to handle their digital infrastructure, but I turned him down. Respectfully. I told him I had my own plans. He never asked again. But now, handing the role to Jenna's fiancé, someone he barely knew, felt like a deliberate statement. A symbolic erasure. A final stamp on the narrative they'd all written for me. Nate doesn't belong in this family's success stories. Everyone raised their glasses. Except me. I caught Michael's eye. He was staring at me again. Only now, it wasn't just confusion. It was guilt. "Nate," he said, clearing his throat. "We should talk after dinner." But Jenna cut in, laughing. "Don't drag him into work talk. He's off the grid, remember? Digital nomad or something. You'll scare him off." My fingers curled around the base of my glass. I could feel the heat rising in my face, not from anger, exactly, from something deeper. A mix of humiliation, betrayal, and bitter clarity. I wasn't just an afterthought to them. I was the family joke. Dessert plates were cleared. People started moving back into the living room. I stayed seated. Michael hesitated for a moment, then stood and followed Jenna out, pulled by her hand like a show pony. Uncle Rick passed me on the way out and clapped me on the shoulder. "Don't take it personally, Nate. You're just not the firm type." I looked up at him. Is that what Jenna told you? He shrugged. She didn't have to. Actions speak louder, right? I watched him walk away. That was the moment something cracked. Not a loud, dramatic break. More like a quiet shift deep under the surface, like tectonic plates sliding just enough to cause an earthquake hours later. I stood up slowly and made my way outside. The November air bit through my jacket, sharp and bracing. I took out my phone, opened my browser, and pulled up something I hadn't looked at in months. My company's landing page. Clean, professional, and minimal. Right beneath the fold, the list of clients. Some big names. Some niche, but all real. All documented. I clicked into the About page. My name. My face. My credentials. A few lines about our mission. Nothing flashy. Just the facts. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I walked back into the house and rejoined the party. Smiling. Calm. Ready. Because Michael wasn't the only one who could Google. And this time, I wasn't staying silent. I didn't say a word the rest of the evening. Not even when Aunt Carla tried to push a Tupperware of leftover sweet potatoes into my hands like it was a consolation prize. Not when Jenna offered a mock sincere, "Don't be a stranger," at the door, or when Uncle Rick patted me on the back and told me to keep at it, like I was still trying to get my GED. I just nodded, smiled, and left. The moment I got in my car and shut the door, I sat there. No music. No engine. Just me, gripping the steering wheel as the cold crept through the windshield. It's funny. You think you've grown past things. That the old wounds don't sting anymore. That their opinions don't matter. You tell yourself you're above it. That you're grounded in who you are now. But then they laugh. They dismiss you. They look at you like you're still the 16-year-old kid who cried after losing a debate round, or the 22-year-old who turned down a real job to build something no one believed in. And suddenly, it's all back. The tightness in your chest. The silent questions. What if they're right? What if you really are just pretending? I drove home in silence. The apartment was dark when I got there. Minimalist. Clean. The kind of place you buy when you're used to moving around and don't trust things to last. I kicked off my shoes and sat on the edge of the bed, jacket still on, phone buzzing quietly in my pocket. I ignored it. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry. I wasn't. Not anymore. Something else had taken root. A quiet determination. The kind that doesn't come with fire or fury, but with focus. The next morning, I woke up early. I made coffee, black and bitter, and sat in front of my laptop. I opened my dashboard and stared at the metrics. Revenue. User growth. Churn rate. Everything was fine. More than fine, actually. But it didn't feel like enough anymore. Not because I needed to prove anything to them. That ship had sailed. But because I realized something. I'd spent years staying small on purpose. I told myself I didn't need validation. That I didn't need to market myself, to brag, to build a personal brand. I let my work speak for itself, and it had. Quietly. Profitably. Privately. But staying quiet had also allowed their version of me to become the only version anyone ever saw. And that was on me. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to argue with them. I wasn't going to email Uncle Rick a list of my accomplishments or try to prove myself to Jenna. I was going to rebuild something I'd let go of years ago, my own narrative. It started small. I hired a branding consultant, someone I'd met years ago at a startup conference. She helped me revamp my website, not just to attract clients, but to tell a story. My story. I updated my LinkedIn for the first time in 4 years. Created a clean, professional portfolio that outlined every product I'd built, every company I'd scaled, every acquisition and license deal. I finally started that newsletter I'd been putting off for years. Weekly updates, case studies, lessons from the trenches. No fluff. Just real, valuable content. Then I started mentoring. A friend of mine ran a nonprofit that helped underrepresented youth break into tech. I reached out and offered to volunteer. Within 2 weeks, I was leading workshops every Saturday, teaching high schoolers how to build their first app, how to pitch a product, how to navigate the noise. For the first time in a long time, I felt visible, not just to others, to myself. That December, I launched a beta version of a new product, something I've been tinkering with in the background for months. It was a platform that helped small online creators monetize their niche communities without relying on sponsorships or ad revenue. I called it Loop Circle. Soft launch only. No ads. No press. By January, we had 2,000 users. In February, a popular Substack writer wrote about how Loop Circle had doubled his revenue in a month. The waiting list exploded. In March, a mid-sized VC firm sent me an email with the subject line, "Let's talk." I said no, and it felt incredible. But all of this wasn't about the wins. Not really. It was about the why. Because for the first time, I wasn't building out of fear, or ego, or to prove the family wrong. I was building out of clarity. Because I knew who I was, and I finally stopped pretending that didn't matter. But then something happened. In late March, Jenna called me. I almost didn't answer. The name on my screen made my stomach clench. but curiosity won. Hey, I said. Hey, she replied. Weird question. Do you know someone named Robert Tillman? I blinked. Yeah. He's the founder of a marketing analytics startup. We did some back-end optimization for them last year. What? She hesitated. Michael just had an interview with his company. I waited. And? I asked. She exhaled. He asked if Michael was related to Nate Blake. Said he saw the last name on his resume and wondered. That's when it hit me. They were Googling me now. She continued, voice quieter. He said you built the backend for half their data stack. That he tried to poach you for a full-time CTO role, but you weren't interested. Silence. Then Jenna added, I didn't know. I didn't respond. She tried again. Why didn't you ever tell us? That was the moment everything crystallized. I tried, I said calmly. You just weren't listening. She didn't argue. For the first time, maybe ever, she didn't have a quip. No sarcasm. Just silence. A few days later, Michael emailed me. Subject, apologies and coffee? He didn't know me one. But he offered it anyway. Said he felt weird about how things went down. That he wished he'd spoken up. That he admired what I'd built. I didn't meet him for coffee. Not then. But I did write back. A polite note. No hard feelings. Then April rolled around. Easter brunch. Same house. Same people. But everything had shifted. Because this time, when I walked through the door, it wasn't awkward silence. Or eye rolls. Or cheap jokes. It was tension. The quiet kind. The kind where everyone knew something had changed, but they didn't know how to ask about it. Michael greeted me first. Gave me a genuine smile. Hey, good to see you, man. I nodded. You too. Jenna hovered nearby. Awkward. Uncharacteristically quiet. Uncle Rick, of course, couldn't help himself. You're looking sharp, he said, eyeing my tailored coat. Someone finally get a job interview? I smiled. Not the forced kind. The real kind. I'm actually hiring right now, I said, taking off my coat. We're scaling. He raised an eyebrow. We? My team, I said. He blinked. You have a team? I didn't answer. Let the silence do the talking. But I wasn't here for revenge. Not yet. I was here to watch the dominoes line up. Because what they didn't know was that the biggest betrayal was still coming. And I wasn't the one who would deliver it. They say revenge is best served cold, but I never liked that metaphor. Cold things are dull. Quiet. Forgotten. What I wanted wasn't a cold dish. It was something that lingered. Something they'd remember. Not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. I didn't want to punish anyone. I wanted them to understand. What they'd done. Who they'd dismissed. What it had cost them. And what it meant to underestimate someone just because he refused to make noise. Easter brunch passed without a scene, which surprised me. Jenna didn't speak much unless spoken to. Michael, on the other hand, tried. He asked about Loop Circle, about my team, even asked for some insight on product market fit for a startup idea he'd been toying with. I gave him polite answers, nothing too deep. I wasn't ready to show my hand just yet. But I took mental notes, of his tone, of how Jenna looked at him now compared to Thanksgiving. The sparkle was gone. The possession in her voice when she'd introduced him as her fiancé had faded into something brittle and performative. Her smiles cracked too fast, and she clung to her wine glass like it was the only lifeline in the room. I could have walked away then. I didn't need to get involved. But the thing is, they'd drawn first blood. Jenna hadn't just laughed at me. She'd rewritten me. In front of my family. In front of Michael. She'd turned my silence into failure. My privacy into shame. And worse, she'd enjoyed it. So yeah, I wanted the truth to surface. But I didn't want to tell it. I wanted them to discover it. Piece by piece. So, I started setting the stage. First, I got in touch with an old friend, Kayla. We'd worked together at a fintech startup I'd consulted for back in 2018. She was sharp, ran her own product design agency now, and happened to be dating a mid-tier journalist who covered business culture and tech success stories. I reached out, casually at first, just to catch up. 2 weeks later, I dropped a carefully worded line. Loop Circle's finally scaling. Might look into telling the story publicly soon. Could use someone with a good eye for headlines. Kayla jumped on it. Within 3 days, I was on a video call with her boyfriend, Liam. We talked about bootstrapping, market gaps, the loneliness of building in silence, how it feels to be written off by your own family, only to succeed quietly behind closed doors. He was hooked. You're like the anti-LinkedIn hero, he said, halfway through our second call. No bragging. No hustle threads. Just results. I love it. I told him I'd think about it. What I didn't tell him was that the article wasn't for me. Not really. It was bait. And if it caught the right fish, I'd know the timing was right. While that was in the works, I made a few strategic moves. Subtle ones. I updated the Loop Circle team page to include new hires. Designers, engineers, marketers, all remote, all real. The site looked busier now. Legit. Then I quietly invited Michael to a virtual panel discussion I was hosting for indie founders. Not personally. Just added his work email to the event list. No context. Just an invite with a sleek banner. From $0 to $100,000 MBR. Bootstrapping in 2025. He RSVP'd within an hour. A week later, the article dropped. The man who peaked after high school. How Nate Blake quietly built a multi-million-dollar platform while his family laughed. I didn't write that headline. Liam did. It went semi-viral on LinkedIn. Shared by a few influencers in the tech space. Quoted by a marketing blog. Even hit Product Hunt's newsletter as a featured founder story of the week. The numbers spiked, but more importantly, eyes turned. Jenna saw it. I know she did because not 24 hours later, I got a text. Jenna, so, you were just traveling for work, huh? I stared at the message for a long time before replying. Me, I still am. She didn't respond. But 2 days later, Michael did. Michael, read the article. Blown away. Would love to pick your brain sometime. I think I messed up. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I focused on step 2, the reunion. Every June, the family hosted a summer bash. Barbecue, pool games, matching t-shirts, all of it. Like Thanksgiving, it was more about the performance than the people. Normally, I skipped it. This year, I RSVP'd with a +1. Now, this wasn't about showing up with some model on my arm. That wasn't the move. Instead, I brought someone more strategic, Ava. She was my COO. Sharp, charismatic, brilliant. She could hold her own in any room, and she looked like someone important without needing to say it. We didn't date, but we got along like we had. She understood the assignment the moment I explained it. You want to do this quietly, she said, after I pitched the idea over a late dinner. Let the tension simmer. Exactly, she smirked. Then I'll wear black. Let them project whatever they want. And project they did. When we arrived, heads turned. Ava made an entrance without trying. Just a confident smile, a firm handshake, and an aura of I'm not here for your approval. It was glorious. Jenna, predictably, appeared out of nowhere. Hey Nate. Wow, you actually came this year. Figured it was time, I said, sipping my iced tea. She eyed Ava. And who's this? Ava, she said, offering her hand. COO at Loop Circle. Jenna blinked. Oh, cool. Fancy. Ava smiled. He's hard to keep up with, but I manage. The corners of Jenna's mouth twitched. Right. Well, it's great to finally meet the brains behind the scenes. Ava's smile didn't budge. Oh, Nate's the brains. I just make sure people don't waste his time. Michael approached not long after. He didn't speak right away, just looked at me, then at Ava, and back at me. Your talk last week. The panel, he said slowly. I took notes. Really insightful. Glad it helped, I said. I didn't realize, back in November. I wish I'd said something. You did, I said. Just not out loud. He looked down. Fair. And then he said something I didn't expect. Jenna's been different lately. I don't know. Frustrated. She's used to being the smartest person in the room, I said. Hard to maintain that when people stopped laughing at her jokes. He didn't deny it. The party went on. Burgers, pool floats, over-enthusiastic uncles doing cannonballs. I mingled. I smiled. I didn't try to dominate the conversation. I didn't need to. Because now, they were the ones asking. So you run your own thing now? What kind of platform is it? You've got a team? Even Uncle Rick approached me, awkwardly, with a plate of ribs and a changed tone. Didn't know you were still in tech, he said. Michael mentioned some kind of creator platform? Loop Circle, I said. Sounds interesting. You should check it out. Your firm has clients who might benefit. He paused. I'll do that. But he wouldn't. Because by now, he knew exactly what it meant if he did. The next phase of my plan was almost ready. One more thing had to fall into place. A client. One of Uncle Rick's biggest. We'd had preliminary talks for months, nothing formal. But they'd reached out again after seeing the article. Asked if Loop Circle could help them scale their private B2B community and integrate internal tools. I said yes. Signed a contract 2 weeks later. The kicker? Uncle Rick had no idea. Not yet. But he would. Very soon. Because Jenna had just gotten wind of the deal. And she was furious. She called me. Called, not texted. You're working with Westlake Partners? I am. You knew they were one of Rick's biggest clients. They reached out to me. You're doing this on purpose. No, I said. You did this on purpose. Back in November. I'm just following through. She was silent. Nate, you're not the same anymore. I am, I said. You just didn't look close enough. The line went dead. And that's when I knew. They'd underestimated the wrong person. And I wasn't done yet. Not even close. The thing about power is, it doesn't always look like power. Sometimes, it looks like silence. Like restraint. Like letting everyone dig their own grave while you smile, shake hands, and wait for the final piece to fall. And that piece? It came in July. Westlake Partners, the client Uncle Rick had spent nearly a decade cultivating, was transitioning their infrastructure. That meant offboarding from his firm's legacy backend and migrating to a fully integrated community and analytics platform. One that could do everything his team used to manage and more. One that I had built. Rick didn't know it yet, but the fuse was already lit. I was looped in as a technical advisor. That was the term they used. What it really meant. I had veto power. Any integration, any transfer, any data migration, they went through me first. 2 weeks before the transition, Westlake sent out formal vendor notifications to all parties involved, including Uncle Rick's firm. Standard procedure. Routine. But Rick wasn't expecting it. I know this because I got a call. From Jenna. You're replacing him? She hissed. I leaned back in my chair, phone to my ear. Not replacing. Just modernizing. You knew he was their vendor. I did. And you didn't tell him? I paused. Did he ever tell me I wasn't good enough to work at his firm? She fell silent. Then, more quietly. You know this is going to hit him hard, right? I looked out the window. Funny. He didn't seem too concerned when he told Michael I was basically unemployed. She hung up. And that was when I knew she finally understood. I hadn't just built a company. I'd built leverage. And now I was using it. The day the news broke internally, just a week before Westlake's fiscal quarter closed, Rick showed up at my office. Not my apartment. Not a coffee shop. My office. He walked in like he owned the place, wearing a forced smile and gripping a manila folder like it was a sword. Nate, he said. Can we talk? Ava greeted him at the front desk. You can wait here. Nate will be out in 5. He looked stunned, like no one had ever asked him to wait before. But he did. When I walked out to meet him, he stood up and forced a chuckle. Nice place. Thanks, I said, guiding him to the conference room. We've grown since Thanksgiving. He sat, uninvited. Look, I'll get to the point. You're walking away from a lot of family goodwill with this Westlake thing. They're a legacy account. Relationships matter. They do, I said. That's why I made sure to personally handle the onboarding. Rick blinked. You what? I slid a document across the table. Not legal, just symbolic. A printout of the article, The Man Who Peaked After High School. He stared at it, jaw tight, hands clenching. I let it go for years, I said. The jokes, the dismissals, the way you and the others turned silence into failure. It was never personal. It was always personal, I said, cutting him off. Calm, precise. You made sure of that when you laughed with Jenna instead of asking me what I'd actually been building. Rick's mouth opened, then shut. I stood. Westlake's decision was about efficiency, better systems, cleaner data. But for me, it's about something else. He stared. Legacy, I said. Yours ends here. Mine's just getting started. He didn't speak again, just stood, gathered his things, and walked out. The door clicked shut behind him. And that was that. The fallout came fast. Westlake's exit triggered a ripple effect. Smaller firms followed. 2 more clients asked for audits, realized they were being overbilled, and pulled out. Within 3 months, Rick's team was reduced to 5, then 3, then none. By October, the firm quietly filed for reorganization. The news never made headlines. But Jenna saw it. And so did Michael. Because by then, he'd left her. He reached out one last time, through LinkedIn, of all places. Michael, I owe you more than an apology. You taught me something I didn't even know I needed to learn. Me, hope you're doing well. Michael, I am now. Thank you. As for Jenna, she never contacted me again. I heard whispers. She moved out of the apartment they shared, went on some luxury solo retreat, posted vague Instagram stories about growth and clearing toxic energy. Then silence. The family, of course, reacted, predictably. Aunt Carla started calling again. Warm now. Curious. Suddenly interested in how business was going. I kept it brief. Rick never showed up to another holiday dinner. Neither did I. But I didn't need to. Because this story wasn't about holidays. It was about history. And I'd rewritten mine. Not with noise. Not with rage. With patience. With precision. With silence so sharp, it cut deeper than any insult ever could. Let them tell the story however they want. I know the truth. And now so do they.